everyone. Welcome to Radiant Living, Inspiring Humanity to Thrive. I'm your host, Marissa B. Today, I'd like to welcome back licensed professional mental health counselor, board certified art therapist, certified forest therapy guide, and professionally trained coach, Tamara McDougall Herl. Today, we're going to be speaking about connecting with your true self. Hi, Tamara. Thank you so much for coming today.
Hi, Marissa. I'm excited to be with you again, to be able to connect. Thank you.
Oh, you're quite welcome. I thought it was so important. This is such an important topic and such a big topic. Again, it's about connecting with your true self. So, of course, the first question I have is what exactly does that mean, your true self? Would you have anything to say to the audience about that so we can just start to see where we're going with this?
Of course, yes. So when I say your true self, I'm it's an expanded way of saying what is known in internal family systems as the self. And some of your listeners are probably familiar with internal family systems. It's a model that was founded by Richard Schwartz. I think it was about 41 years ago. And so it's been around for a while and it has gained a lot of respect and validity. And it's even more exciting now. I just started taking a class from him. And so now he's bringing it, he's talking about the spiritual components, the spirituality of internal family systems, which I'm so excited about because I've had questions. I've been using internal family systems for about 7 years now. I tried to use it, tried to introduce it in an organization that I was part of because I was really struggling at the organization. So IFS can be used in so many different ways. It can be used, of course, with clients, but it can also be used in organizations. And there are some people who are taking it out into the world with all of the challenges that we're facing now. But basically, the model says that each of us has what is called self. That's a core, it's the essence of who we are. I see it as a spark of the divine. So, we've got the divine, God, whatever word you want to use to describe that higher power. And then Richard Schwartz says that one way to think of it is that it exists in part in wave form, but it also kind of exists in particles. And that's why when I heard him say that, I thought, oh, that really fits with when I say it's a spark of the divine. So we have that essence. It can be never be damaged. It's whole and complete, and it knows how to heal both internally within ourselves, and also it knows how to heal when we relate with other people in the world, in the workplace, in relationships. So we have that core essence, and it's, as I said, it's always there, but sometimes it kind of gets covered over, or I always think of it like clouds blocking the sun. The sun would be the true self, and then the clouds are parts that show up. We're kind of born with them. So when we're born, we're immediately a son or a daughter, and that's like a part because we take on the role, and there are things that happen. And our parts initially are healthy and resourced, but sometimes when we encounter trauma, they take on burdens and they carry pain. And if the pain is great enough or deep enough, then the internal family system works to kind of hide that part away so that the system, the psyche, doesn't have to be continually reminded of that deep pain and trauma. So it kind of gets locked away. And then there are protector parts that volunteer to step up and keep watch and guard over that part that has been wounded. And so trauma can is often the thing that precipitates the protector parts showing up. So yeah, it's a fascinating model.
It is. Um, but because there are many parts, do you find that when people start with this, there are maybe barriers um, to them beginning this kind of inner work? Because it is, first, I'm assuming recognizing the parts that are there, because that is part of it, correct?
Yes, it is. And sometimes there are barriers. I mean, the barriers can be sometimes people don't want to go back and look at their trauma. They think they're going to be consumed by it or overwhelmed by it. So they try to just stuff it away. And some people can successfully do that, but other people cannot. So, like for myself, for instance, when I was working in corporate America in a mental health system, and I found that I have this snarky part that kept showing up, and I was getting passed over for promotions, and I would just like spout things in meetings, and then I would be embarrassed later because I was ticked off about the way that the mental health professionals were being treated. And so I tried to introduce the model of using IFS, and I tried to get the leadership team to get some training so that instead of, my supervisor looking at me and saying, "What is wrong with you?" to understand that it was a part of me that was reacting this way. So as I said, it shows up in the workplace, it shows up in relationships, and it can be embarrassing. So being embarrassed is one of the barriers, and being afraid of being consumed by trauma. Also, another barrier is like sometimes when we start uncovering these parts, people will say, "There's so many of them," and they might feel overwhelmed.
Mhm.
That happens occasionally. But
And there are, right? I mean, we are the sum of our parts, really,
right,
aren't we?
right. And well, Richard Schwartz says we're more than the sum of our parts.
Mhm.
I haven't actually read that book of his, so I'm not exactly sure what he means by that. Um, but yeah, there can be many, many parts, and that can be challenging. Recognizing the parts isn't so hard, really. What I typically do when I'm working with someone is I have them, well, there's parameters that I put in place. I say,
Mhm.
we move at the speed of soul. So if your system is not ready to do this work with a certain part, it's not going to happen and you're in control of this. You can say that you want to stop or slow down or just pause for a moment to ask questions. And that gives people a sense of control, and that helps a lot. But then what I do after I've explained all the parameters I just help them get really relaxed, and I tell them that parts often show up as thoughts or emotions or body sensations or images. So just have them pay attention to what they're noticing. And that is usually, they might say, "Well, I've got this pounding on the right side of my head, or I've got tightness, or I've got tingling." So almost everybody notices something. And then we just go from there, and we explore. And I just help, well, in a session, I help people once they notice a part, then I make sure that they are connected with their true self. And the way that I do that is there are eight Richard Schwartz calls them the C words. There are eight.
Mhm.
Well, there's eight C words and five P words, and when
Mhm.
and when a person gets access to any one of those, and just it doesn't take a whole lot of access to self, just a little bit of access to self, like curiosity is one that a lot of people can, if they can just be curious about, well, what is that tingling, and to kind of notice about, if the I try to get them to notice more and more about um, the energy of that part that's showing up. And because when they get connected with self, then they can interact with the part, and usually it's a protector part that shows up first, and is
Mhm.
guarding the one that's been wounded. And because the goal of internal family systems is to get access to and be able to embody and live from self as much
Mhm.
as possible.
And now, you know that there are many schools of thought in both counseling and coaching that say that you don't need to go over any of the trauma or the past and dig that up. A lot of the, I guess, more, I don't want to say newer, but more popular maybe forms um, are to work from this point forward. What do you say to that?
Mhm.
Especially with what's happening on the planet, because that's a broader
Right.
a broader category as well. So what do you say to that?
Well, I say, and because are highly resourced parts as well. And so sometimes that's what people want to focus on is those highly resourced parts. And if they're able to, if they're parts that have experienced trauma, or the protector parts aren't acting out and don't have these extreme beliefs that and behaviors that cause problems, then they can do that. And so, yeah, so if people say that they don't want to go back and work with that stuff, I can still work with them.
I see. And then, right, because as I said, in society, I mean, there's so much that's fractured now. I would think that each one of us working on the self would be the best step forward. I
Oh,
mean, that's my
definitely.
personal opinion, right? I mean, you have to start from the self, I would suspect. And if with my clients, I mean, that's what we discuss. It's really, and we don't have to go back to maybe the traumatic event or the past, but it's the working on the self in whichever way that works for them. But I know that the internal family system is all about the self, more or less, right? I mean, can you explain a little bit more about the system itself, if possible? Because I believe it is something that is all about the self.
Hi, everyone. Marissa B. here from Radiant Living. If you like what we're doing and want to keep the conversations going, please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know every time we upload a video. Thank you.
Definitely. Yes, because most of the so one of the things that the parts of the internal system need to realize is that that the person, the whoever the person is, I'll just make up a client's name. Let's call her Jane. So
Mhm.
Jane's parts need to realize that she is no longer, 5 or 12 years old, and that she has resources, and she is able and willing, has the skills to take care of them, and that they don't have to be afraid that what happened back then is going to happen
Mhm.
now in the present moment. Right. So just building trust, building collaboration. And sometimes it's just a matter of, like with a younger part, when the client, let's say Jane, is working with a 5-year-old part, and this part has witnessed some trauma, but they're not ready to talk about it yet. And all they want to do is to have Jane play with them. And so that's what Jane will do in the session. In her imagination, she'll just picture herself playing with that young part, and that part, when the 5-year-old part, learning to trust and seeing that Jane is, oh, she's a grown up now, and she has resources, and she's willing to play with me now, and she's not going to make me give up the things that I love in order to fit in. So that, and so they just learn to trust. And yeah, and it's interesting because now that Richard Schwartz is talking about the spirituality of internal family systems, he
Mhm.
never would talk about this before. He says because
Right.
he was afraid that his theory would be made fun of. But he
Mhm.
says now, because of the state of the world, that he's decided it's just too important. And so self is more than just a psychological state. He believes, and I have believed this for, the 7 years that
Mhm.
I've been using it, is that self is actually, some people might call it's when you're accessing Christ consciousness, whatever
Mhm.
phrase, whatever religion or spiritual beliefs you come from, but it's like this universal wisdom that is beyond. It's kind of like what Rumi calls that field beyond right or wrong.
Mhm.
That's what it is. It's this energy, this wisdom that can help us. So for instance, a lot of my clients, and probably yours too, they're just so upset by what's happening in the world
Mhm.
today.
Yes.
And right, and so sometimes they get triggered by it, so they don't, it can, sometimes people sort of stick their head in the sand and don't want
Mhm.
to think about it. But some of my clients are learning, when they get access to self, they can now see what's happening without being triggered,
Mhm.
and they can think about, okay, how can I find a way to be useful? What is my role? What is a shift that I can make in the sphere of people that I have influence over? So maybe it's learning to be less reactive. Maybe it's learning to be like Jane, the client that I was talking about, was learning that she needs to be more spontaneous and playful like she used to be, and
Mhm.
not be so worried about other people's opinions. So there's just so many, there are, it's like a microcosm. What we do, and I'm sure you believe this too,
Mhm.
has ripple effects. And so when I change,
Of course.
right, when I change the way that I interact in my family, then it impacts families everywhere.
Right, exactly. And it's social change, right? I mean, it just is a natural progression, right? Once we're changing ourselves and once that transformation occurs, it actually is almost inseparable from societal change because we then ripple out into the world. And if
Exactly.
everyone's doing it, right, if everyone's doing it, then the societal change is much greater.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, because we're all changing things in whatever, being a better parent, being showing up at work differently, being a leader in a different way.
And now, do you find that most people actually do find their true self? And then, if so, what happens once they get there? How do they move forward from there?
Yes, I have not had even one single client not find their true self. Everyone I've worked with, and I've worked with a lot of people in the last 7 years, has
Mhm.
been able to find their true self. And what happens is that they are able to stop playing small. But
Mhm.
I had a client who she could sense that she had outgrown this job that she was in. And when we healed the some of the for her, she needed to go back and heal trauma. And when she did that, then she was able to step into a bigger role, and she's so much happier. So they stop playing small, they stop second guessing themselves, they step more fully into their life purpose, they get more courage, they have more clarity, they have more compassion for themselves and others. They're able to be more playful. They're able to be more in the present moment, just to actually be present. And that can also create, sometimes my clients experience physical healing because sometimes the physical ailments that we have emotional components. So many, many benefits.
And of course, what do you say to people if they're here, if they're like the audience, somebody's listening to this, or they happen upon this, they hear this, and they'd like to try it, but they're fearful. They don't know like the first step to take because I would assume that it is kind of frightening when you hear finding your true self or, delving into finding your true self. That might frighten a lot of people, especially people with trauma. Where do you suggest that they start?
Well, a good place to start is to watch on YouTube. You can find videos of Richard Schwartz doing different pieces of the process. So I would say start there and listen to him talk because he's very down to earth, and he will explain, and a lot of times he'll walk people through a process, and usually he starts with protector parts because you don't have to get into the trauma when you're working with protector parts. And when I work with groups, I work with protector parts because it's not appropriate to work with the exiles, the wounded ones. So, or read his book. He's got several books. He's got one called No Bad Parts, and he's got another one called Greater Than the Sum of Our Parts, I think is what it's called. And then, yeah, so if they don't like watching YouTube, there are lots of books on the topics too. There are workbooks that you can work through, and that can help you to understand what the concepts are. So I think that's the place to start. And it's understandable that people are afraid. And I bet you probably say this to clients too, when they tell me that they're afraid to look at that, I'll say, that's understandable. And so like in stages of change, we start by planting seeds, so maybe one seed would be, I get that you're afraid, but imagine living the next 5 years of your life with things being the same way that they are. And a lot of times they'll say, that doesn't sound like fun at all. Then, so, well, what if we figure out a way to take a first step? Another thing that people can do is to get on a website like Psychology Today and find practitioners in their area
Yes.
that are trained in internal family
Mhm.
systems, and interview 3 or 4 of them and see if because everyone puts their own spin on it. I mean, we follow
Exactly.
right, we follow the same
Hmm.
guidelines. because it's a proven model that works.
Mhm.
But to see if you're a good fit with a different practitioner, which one
Right.
you feel a heart connection with.
Right, true, exactly, because not everybody is for everybody, and that's perfectly fine. I think that one of the biggest things, and I like to tell people that I speak to, there there are no parts that are bad. Nothing's bad. I think a lot of people come with that preconceived notion that something that they're going to discover is bad about themselves, or that they're bad, or that they carry this badness, for lack of a better word, inside them, and that's not really what it is at all. That nothing is bad. That
Correct.
it's just all a part of you, and you're delving into those different parts and learning to trust them and work with them and to change and transform, for the better for yourself. And I think that oftentimes we have a lot of people that are fearful to begin anything like this because that's what they're in fear of finding out about themselves, almost like pre-programming
Mhm.
of those terms that they carry with them.
Right, or they don't want other people to know that they have this
Mhm.
bad part. But Dick Schwartz says, I agree wholeheartedly that there are no bad parts.
Right.
That they're doing the best they can, and the only thing that they could think of at the time that the trauma occurred as a way to keep the person going, to keep them stable,
Yes.
help them function and cope. And there are no bad parts. And so the part of the work is just hearing their story. Why did they, what was happening? Why did they
Mhm.
start doing what they did? And, how do they feel about this job that they're doing? And what would it be like, if they knew that the part that they were protecting was safe, what would they like to do instead? So it's fascinating. So just building trust and trying to understand this part that maybe they think is bad, or they don't like the way that the part,
Right.
yeah, that part of them. Yeah.
Well, I think also often the the pre-programming or the preconceived notions do come from external sources, external forces that we carry with us. And so, like you said, it's they're fearful because they feel that they're going to discover something bad, and nothing is bad. There's no such thing as good or bad, more or less. Um, it's just working on oneself, changing and transforming.
Hmm.
Things that no longer serve you, that maybe
Exactly.
they served you at one time and they no longer serve you now. And so that's just put to the side, but not that it was bad. And I think that that's something that's really important, I guess, to stress to people.
Hmm.
Um, because there is that, isn't it? There's always that struggle before an individual becomes empowered.
Right.
Right before the self becomes empowered, there's a struggle um, with a lot of different things.
Hmm. Right. And sometimes those are due to what's called legacy burdens, and those are
Mhm.
things that are handed down from generation to generation. And so if there has been some negativity around power, then a person is going to have to
Mhm.
change in order to be able to embrace their power and own it and claim it, then they'll have to, shift their thinking and heal the extreme thoughts and behaviors that are related to how we see ourselves or others who are in power.
That's true. And then what would you say to people who maybe are listening to this and are saying, but I don't have the time or the energy to do this because the world is in the condition that it's in. I've had some people come to me saying that, that they feel that their issues might not be so large on the grand scale. What do you say to that?
Hmm. So I tell them that because the world is in the state it is even more reason to do the work, because and it does take time and energy, and you can space it out to whatever pace works for you. And if you're reading a book, you can pick it up or put it down, or if you're working with a therapist, you can see them once a month if that's all you have the time and energy for. And I really feel like it's imperative that we do this work now, which is why I was so excited when you reached out, or when I reached out, when we connected again, because the world, our society is facing lots of challenges right now. And I believe that we're alive at this point in time for a reason, because each one of us, as we take on whatever we don't like about our own lives or in the world, as we find ways to be useful in the world or find ways to shift the way that we show up in relationships, it's going to help. It's going to help because I believe that we need to create new ways of doing things. And we can do that when we get tapped into our true nature.
All right. And isn't it true that even though the work can feel heavy at times, that it's often in those moments in those moments of struggle, right, that the light comes on, or the doorway opens up, showing us um, an alternative way, or a new way, right? A new way that now we're going to walk forward with, and we're going to put aside the old way. We're going to walk forward, and as we're all working on that individually, that it really is benefiting the collective.
Definitely, definitely. So true.
And so, where do we go from here with this?
Well, if people are intrigued, I would encourage them, as I said, to check out the work of Richard Schwartz, his books, his YouTube videos, and other people that do the work as well. If people want to connect with me, they're welcome to visit my website, which is thewilddivine.us. I'm happy to, I have exploratory calls where we can explore how to just raise your vibration. And so, or find a therapist close to you. I do lots of virtual work, but some people like in-person work. So yeah, get on Psychology Today, find some people to interview. But really, like, where do we go from here? Just remember, I really believe that we're the ones that we're waiting for. So
Mm-hmm.
if you feel, if you see things that you don't like in your own life or in the world, then see it as maybe the universe is tapping you on the shoulder saying, hey, let's create some change around this.
Yes. And again, I just want to mention that this is discussing about the true self and internal family systems, which is a model. And it's been around for over 40 years,
Correct.
if I'm not mistaken, correct, over 40 years that it's been around. And it is one of the many ways that people can work on themselves. I don't want anybody to feel that it's the only way, but it's one of many ways. It seems that it's a way that works personally first and ripples outward. So that's something to think about. But as we said, because there's so much fracturing going on and so much pain on the planet, that even though we think that working on ourselves may be not essential, it really is. And that's why we were having the conversation today, right? It was just one of the many conversations to have.
Right. Right. Yeah, and it's also a way, if you like to explore if you want your work on yourself to have a spiritual component, then
Yes.
this is a model that really can embrace that. So
Right, which I think is wonderful that he's added that in. Um, that finally that he's added in, and that he's not fearful to have to speak about it, because it is whole, isn't it? It is the whole being. It is part of the whole. And if we're working on that part, if we're working on other parts of ourselves, we should be working also on the spiritual aspect of our lives.
right, right.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today and discussing just a little bit about this. I will absolutely list all the information in the description box. Make sure that people can see where they can reach you and your website. And I encourage everyone uh, to find out about it. It's not scary. It's another tool, right? Another tool for our toolbox, right? It's another method that we can use for ourselves to move forward on the planet.
Definitely. It's worth checking out. Even if it might not be a good fit for you, it's worth checking out just to see.
As I said, you can never have enough tools, right? Some of them we pull out more often to use than others that are in there. We're just comfortable that we know that they're there, that we know about them. But it's always better to have more than less.
Right, exactly.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today, Tamara. I'm so thrilled that we got a chance to talk a little bit about this.
Me too. And thank you for allowing me to be a guest.
Oh, you're quite welcome. You take care now.
You as well.